Hello. Today we'll have a look at video games as educational tool. Now, video games are hugely popular, I don't need to tell you that, and the release of most desired video games in fact have made significantly more money on first-day sales than almost any movie released. And some researchers believe there is a connection between video games and learning. And video games, they are mass culture. We've already talked a bit about video games as cultural expressions, similarities with cartoons, movies, and so on. Now, what we call the computer generation, and I'm not quite sure, in fact, how many shall we include in this? Those who started playing in the 80s or what? But let's say that your generation is stimulated differently than former generations. Also, researchers claim. What do you think? Do you feel that you are stimulated more differently than the generations before you? It's also said that students today have grown up in an environment that is highly stimulating, frequently changing, and where they've grown accustomed to instant gratification. And educators today still tend to teach in a manner that takes things one concept at a time, but students are responding to using patterns and grouping concepts as a better way to interpret and hold information. Do you feel that is true for you? So, video games, they are cultural expression, just like cartoons and movies. Can we learn something from cartoons, for instance? Apart from the first law of cartoon physics, that gravity doesn't work until you look down. Art Spiegelman, the creator of Mouse, he in fact have stated that as far as he's concerned, he learned a lot of ordinary everyday life issues by reading cartoons. Some may perhaps say the same about movies. So what about video games? Now, they are interactive, naturally, and they may hold students' attention much longer than listening to a teacher lecture. And we may say that by forcing students to participate through the video games, lectures become much more beneficial. And video games as such, they contain motivational tools, such as being able to obtain high scores and reach higher levels, so you have the competitive element. And Kosinovsky, he states that video game never loses patience with their students. And that is true, isn't it? Neither does a computer. Many of the outcomes of playing games, though, they are unintended. For instance, it's not intentionally designed into a game to achieve particularly learning goals. Entertainment games are not intentionally designed to improve visual perceptual skills, for instance, but according to Green and Bavelier, they appear to do so. And then, of course, we have learning games who are intentionally designed to support learning, often what we call pedagogical games. They, though, doesn't seem to have that much success in schools, perhaps because they are too boring. So, Garris, Eilers and Driscoll, they looked upon some learning outcomes from video games. And as far as they're concerned, we may point to skill-based learning outcomes, such as technical and motoral skills. Cognitive outcomes, as for the clarity, knowledge of facts and data. Procedural, knowledge of how to perform a task. Strategic, the ability to apply rules and strategies, and affective outcomes, beliefs and attitudes. We have something we call the CREST model. O'Neill, Weines and Baker talks about this in that paper in 2005, and it identified 5 families of cognitive demands. Content specific, meaning content understanding and problem solving, and content independent, which is collaboration, teamwork, communication and self-regulation. Now, many of the features that make games engaging also support effective learning. Personally, I feel that violent video games does in fact systematically and quite efficiently use educational principles of learning, cognition and instruction to teach ethical awareness. But they were probably not made with that outcome specifically. Jordan Zafiro, he said that video games teach critical thinking, problem-solving skills and perseverance while building metacognitive skills. if we look at video game Walking Dead, for instance, this involves themes like existential nihilism, justice of civilization, destruction, and assisted suicide. This is not very pleasant themes, really, but these themes seem to arouse strong commitment and tremendous moral philosophical energy in students. That is why, in fact, this has been so successful to use in education in upper secondary school, among other in Bergen. As for extent of impact of games on perceptual and cognitive abilities, Bollett and his colleagues examined whether playing video games helps players to cognitively warm up, sort of crank the brain up, to put it like that, before a test. And then they found, in fact, that playing violent or also non-violent video games between 2 trials of cognitive tests, assessing short-term working memory, visual attention, mathematical decision-making, and auditory perception, led to improved performance relative to those in the control group. So that's interesting, isn't it? Some of the pedagogical variables that influence how efficient what we call game-based learning might be is those with prior video game experience, they consistently perform better than those without, and that is natural. But these days, almost every young person have some prior video gaming experience. Providing narrative structure in an RLG led to increase in knowledge, but not to a more positive attitude to collaborative learning, nor more motivation for learning history. Yes, perhaps. We may think about, for instance, history lessons and Assassin's Creed. Could it be used to learn history? Some feel that, in fact, and there has been some classes where Assassin's Creed have been used. Feedback provided to players was important in effective learning, and worked out examples had more positive influence on the learner's situational subject interest and problem-solving tasks. Many businesses, though, medical profession and US Army, have often used games as training tools for their employees. And many researchers agree video games assist in improving and developing real-world skills. And here are some examples, and you may click them yourself and have a look at them. I will upload this presentation also in SlideShare, where you get access to the links. Within higher education, human psychology have had autonomy class exercise based on video game. Music have used Wii remotes in performance. Teaching effectiveness program have used them. Math for non-math folks. Environmental studies have used simulation. Literature have been used video games in new media courses. Teaching ethics in social informatics and game culture courses, including this one. And also, in fact, video gaming programming courses have also used the video games as such, well, naturally. So some conclusions could be that playing computer games leads to diverse outcomes and impact. And some of the strongest evidence of the impact of game is in the area of unintentional outcomes. And this is where it's interesting for many of us to take commercial, ordinary video games that all students or pupils are already playing and see what can we, how can we use it in a learning situation. And many of the features which makes games engaging also support effective learning. But what do you think about that? We'll talk more about that in face-to-face classes on Tuesday. See you then.